What is tonality and how does it affect how audiences perceive that character being performed? Stick around and I'll tell you all about it. Hello, welcome to Character Voice Building with me, Fernando Macias Jimenez. I am here to help you create and develop well-rounded character voices. Now, we're in the instrumentalization category of the RCSB, Rounded Character Speech Blueprint. If you haven't checked the overview video, check it out somewhere. It'll give you a very brief overview of what all this is, what the framework is about. Basically, it's to create more well-rounded, well-developed character voices. Now, instrumentalization category. This is all about thinking of your voice as an instrument, as a musical instrument. And today we're talking about the second element, which is tonality. What exactly is tonality? Tonality is the bass pitch or range of the voice. So it is sometimes classified and traditionally classified as soprano, alto, tenor, bass, that kind of thing. However, why not just call it pitch in general? Well, I feel like I refer to pitch when it's the individual notes being performed. Tonality, to my mind, is that combination of all those notes being performed. Similarly, range is the upper and lower limit of your voice in terms of pitch, how high or how low it can go. But I feel like tonality is that plus the frequency at which certain pitches are being used within that range. Does that make sense? With that said, we're going to talk a lot about pitch. So pitch is created by tightening or loosening the vocal folds inside your larynx. So think about it like a rubber band. If you tense and stretch that elastic band and you pluck it, it'll have a higher pitch than if you loosen it and you pluck it again, it's going to be very low. Now going back to the mechanics video, this is completely independent of the resonance or any of those filters that we talked about. This is only the vibrator part of the voice before it gets filtered through all the resonances in our head. Now, people tend to think in extremes. How high or low can you go? But very often, you don't necessarily have to think about it that way. Many times, it's much more about what the limits of that particular voice are. It doesn't have to be all the way up or all the way down. It's just a matter of setting an arbitrary range for that specific character. Particularly, this comes up often of what is the lowest note, the lowest pitch that a character actually produces. If you don't go below a certain pitch, then you might actually have the perception of a higher voice without having to go that high. So while you have this voice kind of here, it's there and you never go below this kind of this pitch right there. It kind of sounds higher, but it really is not. It's kind of in between, but just because you don't go lower, it feels like it's high all the time. Now, with a pitch, how does it affect how an audience perceives that particular character? There are several elements to this. One is, of course, age and gender. The younger the age tends to be the higher the pitch. Basically, same thing with gender. Gender traditionally is considered male is lower, female is higher. Keep in mind, however, that a lot of this also has to do a lot with resonance, and we'll deal with that later. Size is another element to this. Biologically, bigger creatures tend to be able to produce lower notes. Again, because those rubber bands are so long, basically like the long strings on a piano and the lower keys. That's basically what's happening. You have longer chords, longer vocal tracts, and therefore you can come up with lower pitch and lower resonance as well. This is something good to keep in mind when you're playing, for example, a monster. Remember, you don't necessarily have to follow this. You don't have to be biologically accurate. Maybe having something that completely plays on one another. A large monster with a tiny voice might be really funny, but it's something to keep in mind. Rigidity. Now, by this, I mean how a character acts or what that character is willing to do. So, for example, if you have a very monotone or restricted range versus all over the place, you can really give that character a sense of, okay, this is an immovable person. You will not convince this person of anything otherwise. They've made up their mind. Alternatively, If they're all over the place, then they might be much more flexible, much more, willing to cooperate. Something very close to that is coldness as well. When you have constricted ranges, those are considered cold. Wide are much more emotionally open. They're much more, you can read them like a book. But when they're constrained, that pitch range, that is considered much more cold and calculating. A lower pitch is also sometimes considered cold or rough. Another thing is emphasis. And this really works by contrast. So when you're performing a character, you might have a very, determined range. And you're just, playing within that range. But maybe something comes up where you want to give that emphasis and you go out of that range. Very rarely, okay? You go up or down. And that, by contrast, gives it much more attention. It really commands your attention much more. You do not expect it. And therefore, because it was not expected, you pay more attention to it. One more of this is energy. Now, this is a generalization, but, the higher the pitch, it tends to be considered more energetic, where the lower the pitch, it can be considered a little bit more laid back or lethargic. Again, there's many examples where this is not the case, but this is just a generalization of how things are perceived.
Example 1.
Hello! Oh my lord, look at you, you're looking so pretty. You're so cute. Oh, don't worry about me. I'm just a friendly monster. Yes, you might see myself, pretty hairy, and I might be a little bit scary with my mandibles and my things, but I'm totally fine. Oh, don't worry. Now you can see my pitch is all over the place. It can be very low, but also it can be very high. This shows that there's some emotional availability in that character. He might be scared. He might not know what to do. He's inviting you to tell him what to do. He's willing to do anything. Oh, then he sees a kitty cat and oh my god! The limits of this character are very high and very low. This is a very dynamic character and it fits with his lovely cuddly outside and inside and everything side.
Example 2.
Hi! This is another character! It's really high up, isn't it, kids? It's really high, but it tends to stay in that general range. But even with that range, there's a lot of variables. It's not just one tone, it's not just going like this. It's actually going like this, and it goes well with emotions. Oh, this is so fun, isn't it, kids? Yeah, it never goes past this threshold, more or less. That makes it seem like it cannot go higher. So it's a smaller little creature that's really fun. So annoying.
Example 3.
So examples from the industry that I have today, I took Parks and Rec as the example for this. Let's start with Tammy 2. Her voice is very, very high all the time. Now, considering that, the same example with the previous character, there's still a range, but it still goes up and down a lot within that range, really expressing that emotional instability, I guess, of the character, volatility of the character.
Give me the key! No! Give it to me! Never! Hey, game over, Tammy. What? You! I got it! No! You'll never catch me! Come back here! Ow! You're not gonna ruin this night! Get away from this car! What? What are you doing? You're crazy!
Now let's go into Tammy 1. This is a very, very restricted range. It's super narrow. That, as we talked about, really conveys the coldness of that character.
Tammy. Ronnie. An old-fashioned prairie drink-off. Had enough of this watered-down baby formula? Not even close.
Not even close.
Let's talk about Jerry. He's the best. Like my first example, he really is cuddly and sweet, and even though he's like the punching bag of the group, he's still very emotionally available. He's very open, he's very nice, and he's, open to forgiving people. He's very loving. So he really uses his range very freely, up and down.
Oh my gosh, look who's here. Leslie.
The nightmare's over, Jerry. We're going back to work. You're not gonna need this anymore.
They can laugh at me all they want, because 2 more years until I retire with full benefits and pension. And my wife and I, we have bought a little cottage on a lake, and I'm gonna get myself a stack of mystery novels, a box of cigars, and I'm gonna sit back and enjoy my life.
Chris Traeger. His voice is mainly in the higher register most of the time. He does go down low. Now again, this is very much in when it comes to emphasis. When he's talking to Leslie and he's very serious about something, he can go low, but most of the time he's high. He's in the high register. And this really helps convey that energetic nature of Chris.
A few months ago, the thought of an infectious disease, even hypothetical, would have sent me careening towards Bummerville. But now, I am infected with the killer virus, and I feel fine. Therapy!
Ron, of course, we have very low in the register, and you have that feeling of rugged, cold. It's again restricted, but it plays on the actual character and his actions. That's how you know that it's really not a cold, disinterested person. It's more of the actions that really convey that he's actually a lovable person.
There's only one thing I hate more than lying. Skim milk, which is water that's lying about being milk.
I would prefer that she ask me for my permission so I can say no. I like saying no. It lowers their enthusiasm.
And finally, Leslie Knope. She varies a lot when it comes to pitch within a very specific range. Very emotional, cares a lot about what she believes in. But every now and then also goes real low or real high to really emphasize certain things. This goes well with the idea of somebody who's really passionate about something.
Ben Wyatt, hello.
Hi, Leslie.
Good to see you.
You too.
Wow, you're really burning up.
Can I get some money for the cab that I took over here, please?
Sure, how much?
I'm not sure. I looked at the meter and it had Egyptian hieroglyphics on it.
Wow.
Do you know the exchange rate?
Pretty cocky for someone whose job is obsolete because of the internet.
And grab the movie! Go! 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 Punk ass book jockey!
So that was Tonality. I really hope this video helped you understand how the pitch and tonality in general can affect how a character is perceived. Take it home, try it on your characters, explore around, see what happens. You might come up with something really fun. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really hope this helps you develop your character voices further. Please like and subscribe and check out What the World podcast. It is an improvised comedy show done completely in character, and it's mainly there just as my personal practice, but anybody can listen to it. Perhaps they'll help in understanding how to apply these concepts to specific characters, and hopefully do them on your own. Thanks again, have a great time, be kind, and I'll see you soon.